Guru Nation, thank you so much for watching and listening. If you're listening, I really appreciate it. My next guest, listen, this is a conversation's going to do well on multiple fronts because before we get into what you do, stuff top, I think it's important to get to know who you are and what you did before. And a lot of our audience, like a big segment of my audience, besides the job seekers, are obviously people who already work in the industry, like yourself. But even more specifically, there is a large cohort of people that were CRAs, just like you. You were a CRA and you transitioned from that into recruiting. Because you went from CRA to line manager and then monitoring manager and then director of ClinOps and then head of FSP model, which is functional service provider. And then you got into ClinOps some more. And then you got into entrepreneurship as far as job recruitment. So you're like a perfect example of somebody who not just talks about recruitment, but has never worked in the industry. You've actually learned the process. You were the candidate at one point that you are trying to place now. Can you talk a little bit about when did you, in your mind, because in your mind, the transition happens much faster than in reality. So, in your mind, when did you transition from a CRA to a job recruiter?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate really having me here. And this is a passion of mine because the amount of journey I went through from being a candidate, being a hiring manager, we all, I'm sure, felt all the frustration, being ghosted, different expectations, and really lack of communication. Sometimes you are told something completely different. You go into interview, you are facing completely different expectations, and you feel not sufficient or not good enough to be able to ask some of the questions you want to ask because it has been either miscommunicated to you or missold to you. I have experienced those many times myself. But also as a line manager, sometimes you're expecting the candidate you have seen on the paper in front of you is going to match. When that doesn't, that kind of gives different perspective as a line manager as well. So this was about 6 months ago. I thought, right, okay, yeah, I think there was a
Hmm.
big gap in here because
Wow.
I went through a lot of frustrations as a hiring manager. The amount of times I was wasting time to actually review the CVs, to look for what I want from the candidate or from the talent I'm looking for, and who's going to match
Yeah.
to my team, not just what is on the paper, but also some of the soft skills I was trying to find out. I
Because
was
you went,
Yeah.
I mean, what I think is super interesting is, and there's like a theme amongst CRAs, and you went beyond CRA. You went to hiring manager, line manager, director of ClinOps. I mean, you got pretty far working for others until you decided to work for yourself. I know a few people here in the States that, matter of fact, one of my CRAs from my previous site, they used to come, he went and worked now on his own, but he opened up a consultancy where they will send CRAs to sponsors. And I think there's a growing need for this, but you actually went pretty far before you thought, hey, why not do this on my own? Why was it? Is it because in the UK it's not as entrepreneurial minded maybe as the US, or like what do you think is the reason? Were you more like hesitant, or what was the reason for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the UK is a bit behind the US in many areas, from the education, from the volume of the workload, but also the opportunities that's being offered to CRAs. There are amazing people out there who are, still a CRA for 15 years, 20 years. Some of them, of course, happy. That's what it suits them. That's absolutely fine. But then not knowing what to do next is kind of a stop for many CRAs. they feel stuck, they can't move further.
Mhm.
Or if they're working for a large organization, it is they feel like they're in the waiting list or in the queue. Doesn't matter how long they've been in the company or not. Given that step line either to a management level or completely different pathway, it's always a hard work, and they really, really need that guidance from someone who's experienced and going through that, just to open that mindset.
When you went from CRA to senior CRA, because you've worked for a lot of the big CROs, right? Like, yeah, I'm here
I
looking
did.
here, one, two, three of the big CROs. There's only like six of them. So you work for, let's say, half of the big ones, and you worked for a few other companies. Mac Clinical Research just looks like what was it,
That's
like a smaller CRO, or what was the
Yes,
Mac?
absolutely. They've started for as a site management organization, and they expanded to a CRO
I see.
services.
I see.
And I supported them introducing FSP as well. So yeah, I think if you're a CRA, listen, and you really want something beyond it, you kind of need to take a step back. It's of
Mm,
course great to work with really good top companies, because it really throws you into a deep end. So you have to kind of learn very quickly and multitask across multiple projects. So that gives you an amazing education. But if you want to do something beyond that, sometimes taking back to a smaller firm, it really gives you that opportunity to be recognized for your skills quicker, and it opens you, people gives you opportunities like Mac did with me, to explore your skills even further.
mm.
And they put a bit of trust on you as well. They kind of open the doors for you to perform. And I was very fortunate, and of course had the great opportunities along the way. And I'm a big believer, communication and also having people around
Yeah.
you is always the key. Connecting with the people
But
makes this success.
whenever we have someone that's been an operator in the space like you've been, I mean, you've done virtually every role at the CRO that you can have on the monitoring side, on the leadership side. You saw a need, and like you even said it yourself, you saw there was a huge discrepancy between when you were a hiring manager, what you needed to hire versus what candidates were presented to you. And so what did
Exactly.
you, as a hiring manager, what did you end up doing? Did you end up just posting your own ads and then realize later, hey, I could be doing this as a business? Or when was that like moment?
Exactly that. And I was doing a lot of frustrations, I should say, and I felt like I was duplicating the work that I was paying to a recruitment agency.
Mm,
We are talking really high rates here. It's very competitive market, and it's not free, right? As the client, you want the best service. That's what you're agreeing in your contract with the recruitment. And you go through a lot of explanation, what you're expecting, what your company culture is, what the role is, and job description, etc. Then after all that conversation and meetings, having been presented not suitable CVs, between all the other work you're doing as your day-to-day job, it is hard work, and that is one of the reasons people are using the recruitment agency, to take that pressure away from them. And that's what they are for, to get the best talent and what they're looking for. But also, not from a hiring perspective, from the candidate perspective, it is exactly the same. uh, the same expectations and the same efforts needs to go. The amount of times I
yeah.
have applied for jobs, positions, they sent me the job description, and they ask my CV, and then you're providing all the information you need, then you don't hear anything back from them, and then you are the one who's chasing it all the time, or they tell you something, and then you go in the interview, you find out completely different information.
Yeah.
And that psychologically, mentally, it can really frustrate you and make you feel not good.
Yeah, there seems to be a lack of, at least from my experience, because I'm a small business owner and we do hire coordinators when we need them. Actually, I figured it out. I start hiring them a little bit before I anticipate needing them And sometimes I'm wrong, like studies don't start till later and I'm overstaffed, but I just roll with it. I figure out something else for them to do. But it seems like at the bigger organizations, there's like a lack of a human uh element. We rely on now I'm hearing candidates complain about algorithms. Oh, well, my CV is not being looked at because the algorithms, I forgot what they call it, something else. It's not exactly algorithm, but some basically an algorithm. Well, they read, the machines read my CV, and then if I didn't get hired or if I didn't even get brought in for an interview, nobody tells me anything, so I assume it's the algorithms. And then, like you said, if I do end up getting interviewed, um, I don't hear back. Why do you think that's the case? Like, when you were a hiring manager, you interviewed way more people than you hired, I assume.
Yeah.
I mean, what was your process for not your company's process, but your process at the time when you were working for someone else?
Absolutely. I think the problem in there, the reason is definitely the lack of understanding of the industry from, talent acquisitions, life science agencies, because 99% they either have not worked in the industry or they don't have the background from the CRO, SMO, whichever the positions, and they're kind of approaching from a sales perspective or a BD perspective. And some of the basic terminologies are not even recognized. In research, there's so many abbreviations, right? Even to be able to understand those, it can mean different things, same abbreviation across
Yeah.
multiple sites.
Yep.
You're not going to accept, for example, CTA position to be exactly the same as a CRO versus SMO, or within the SMOs, for example, site management organizations, depending on how big the site management organization is, again, can be very vary. So for me, when I was hiring, the salary expectations were versus to the experience was so unrealistic. And I don't know what they were being told, even though we had a bracket, etc. For example, if we are saying maximum this salary that we would be willing to pay as a hiring manager to recruitment company, uh, it felt like they were being told the max salary straight away rather than actually doing a reality check
Mm.
versus to their CV and their experience. And what I found out because of the COVID, there were a lot of CVs. They were looking at the years of experience on the CV rather than actually some people didn't actively work during the COVID or didn't have active projects, but they were still hired. They lacked the experience I was looking for. You could clearly see these gaps. Even though for example, they might be 5 years of experience or 3 years of experience, the 2 years of during the COVID, it was very minimal activities they have performed. Therefore, the questions you were asking, technical questions for the job, um, it was lacking. You could see that gap was
Yeah,
not there, and hence why they were looking at the higher salary because of the years of experience on their CV.
it makes sense. And, from my limited hiring experience, I mean, maybe I hire a few people a year, maybe over the past almost 20 years now. So, I've had a couple of hires, like I've hired 40 to 50 people, I would say, in my entire career. You don't always get it right. It could be perfect on paper, they could even interview well, and then it just doesn't materialize. Or they were either like so good, they elevated so quickly, or I guess they progressed so quickly from zero to, because we usually hire with zero research experience. They progress so rapidly, they outgrow the company quickly. And
Yeah.
that's the issue at some small sites. So there's never like a perfect candidate, but I've had, definitely if I were to rank all my employees of all time, there would be some surprises at the top of the list, I think, that I would have never expected. So there's so many intangibles that you can't even fit into a algorithm or a computer, and even when you're using humans, you
Yeah.
can't really explain what you're looking for really a lot of the time. Like we know what we don't want a lot easier than what we do want. And I think that's really the main job of like these job recruiters is to filter out like so that the interviewer doesn't waste their time, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And I think it requires a bit of soft skill to test that, from both sides, from the recruiter point of view, from hiring manager, but also from the candidates. And, as a hiring manager, I always thought I can actually train people. I'm always open. I'm always to develop and teach. But the soft skills, you either sometimes have it or not, and that comes with the person. And to build on that willingness to learn, open and open to change, especially in our industry, you really need to adapt very quickly because a lot of changes happens very sudden. And it's called research, right? Sometimes you learn as you're doing it, some of the things as well.
Yeah,
So it does take certain personalities in a way. Not everybody like that.
yeah. What kind of companies hire you now for your services? Because you went out, I think the best chances of firms to succeed are people like you.
Yeah, absolutely. So our main clients are the site management organizations
Ah,
and the site networks, but also we do have small to medium biotech companies and pharma
anywhere in
companies.
the world, right?
Yes, we cover all global, and we've got really great database we built ourselves with me and my business partner over the 15 years. All these amazing people we worked with, that we surrounded with, and there are amazing talents in there. But we are also building it every day with newly graduate research naive across all board.
Mm.
We cover medical, clinical, and non-clinical as well. And that's another thing, if anybody is want to involve in the research, I always advise research doesn't mean it's just medical. We need amazing talents, from the biostatisticians, from the data management, project management, all the skill sets you can name it. Um, it requires, and it's good to kind of broaden your knowledge and experience. And that's why we do drop-in sessions, where it is a
Yeah, you
safe
were telling me
zone.
a little bit before the
Yeah.
interview what that, can you explain what a drop-in session is and why you do it and then how it's effective?
Yeah, absolutely. So we try to do it quarterly. I would love to do it even more often alongside of it because it come about really. I do lecturing as well in colleges and universities, trying to educate the next generation's researchers. These drop-in sessions are where it is a safe zone where everybody can ask any questions. It could be basic interview questions, how to answer certain questions during the interview, how to prepare, but also industry expectations. Sometimes a simple question is not felt safe to ask during the interview. So these are the sessions that it gives opportunity to people freely ask without being judged or risk of losing the position. And
Risk of losing the interview that they're in the middle.
absolutely, because they feel like if they ask, the
Yeah.
interviewer might think they're not good enough or they don't know what they're
What's the
talking about.
most frequently
Yeah,
asked questions in these sessions?
it's actually the abbreviations are very much asked.
Ah,
Uh, yeah, absolutely. And from the CRC point of view, usually people think it's like a data management. There's a lot of uh, thoughts behind that. They think they're gonna do data entry, which is really, really different expectations and depending on which country you are. And it really gives opportunity as well. Like somebody from US might join the session, and then UK might join the session, and people start to learn what each countries are doing rather than just staying in the country they are in and that's what they think it is. Actually, in the industry,
mm.
there's bigger picture.
And you do this free. You do like I assume these are
Absolutely
like
free. Absolutely free.
Zoom
Yes,
sessions.
through a Zoom session, and we usually advertise it. And we will be
Wow.
actually the next session will be on via LinkedIn. We never really advertise on LinkedIn, but we will be because it's growing. We want to make it bigger. And
Wow.
hopefully, next steps, I would love to start bringing industry experts into these calls, one at a time, so they can actually express from their end what is their expectations as well, and ask the questions they
Yeah.
want to know as an interviewer.
That's awesome. SevTap's link to her LinkedIn is underneath this video. By the way, if you're interested, you can get hit up by a bunch of people now. We're going to talk about working with research naive. You were saying medics, EMTs, however you call them, paramedics. I think there's a huge opportunity there, especially for sites. Before we get to that, how do you like what you do now versus being a monitor and like giving the truthful answer?
I love it. I really do, because I feel like I am bringing my CRA skills into this, and this is kind of relies aligns with my passion, because I love opening the doors to people and providing the information I have, but also learning from people. So yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
I have seen a lot of companies, a lot of positions, and amazing people around me. Of course, I made mistakes and I learned from that. And to be able to pass this on now to people for their next career, they are either research naive or not. It's an amazing opportunity, because most of our hours we spend it at work, and you want to be happy at what you do. It's not
Yeah.
just a tick box.
What was being a CRA like for you? Like the honest.
Oh my goodness, it was a lot of hair pulling sometimes, but every day was different.
Hmm.
And I had to learn a lot. I had to learn myself. It wasn't just the technicality of the job. It wasn't just about the protocol or the site. I had to learn the individuals, the people I was working with at each site, different personalities, and accepting I didn't know everything. And it was, if I can give one advice to CRAs out there, accept what you don't know. Don't say that you know, and it's okay, because this is why you work in teams. That's why you work with the site. This is why
Yeah.
you work with the investigator and the CRO. You can't know
But I think
everything.
I think the reason what for that is sites get frustrated. So I've interviewed like a lot of coordinators on my podcast, and one of the themes is obviously if you're a likable CRA, it's very forgiving, right? You can get away with a lot if you're likable. So this, I think that's rule number one if you're a CRA, like to have site in is to be likable and make the site feel like you're on their side and not antagonistic to them. So setting that soft skill aside, I think what bothers a lot of sites and coordinators is when they have a question for their CRA and they don't get an answer, right? Like, we'll call our CRA in the middle of a visit, of a patient visit, and say, hey, what do we do here in this situation? And it's always the better prepared CRA that give us an answer. And sometimes they'll say like, I don't know exactly, but this is what I think, or and let me follow up quickly. It's never like, oh, I'm not sure, you need to contact, someone else. Like
No, absolutely not.
so that I think there's an element of being prepared as a CRA that sites prefer. I mean, you've been in these situations too. I don't need to tell you.
Absolutely. I have had positions that I have prepared, and I had positions that the night before, while I'm in the hotel room, I've got SIV in the morning, and I still don't have SIV slides being sent to me by the global team.
Wow.
Uh, so, this is why you kind of need to adapt to yourself very quickly. And it's not really ideal. It's not great to be in the position that's where you have to face the site that you haven't been trained or been prepared or supported. And there have been a lot of CRA courses, multiple companies out there in 2 months, 3 months, they have been trained, and then they've been let go in up to the size and allocated to projects and expected to deliver. So it takes two to tango, right? They
Yep.
really need the support they need. They really need to be trained properly. It is not just, especially with the risk-based monitoring, etc. having that understanding, doesn't matter which patients have been allocated for the risk level. You need to really think about the broader picture where you should be looking at and what you should know, what you should, look into. These are the educations and trainings really need to be more hands-on by the CROs or biotech companies, hired by, because it's not really fair on the CRAs to be just thrown to the side and expect to know everything. But I completely appreciate, I've been from the side perspective as well, amount of SIVs and feasibilities we had. It was just a tick box, and we haven't had the support we needed. That meant delays for the site. That meant we couldn't be green light. Patients were waiting and they were being promised to come. A lot of frustrations and also cost effectiveness, right? It's
Yep.
costing to sites all this waiting, long journeys. And this is why we need, I think, this triangle in the industry. We need to work with one communication plan. Stop having different communication plans. CRO has got their own communication plan, SMO has got own, and the pharma has got their own. If you are in the one project, work for the same communication plan, so everybody works for the same thing, so you can have a better pathway, and hopefully you can get the better support.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I mean, those in those what do you call them, drop-in sessions. I'm sure there could be a lot of tips like this for the more experienced ones. Do you do drop-in sessions for the experienced people too, or do you
It,
separate
it, it
the
is a
group?
mix. We haven't separated it yet, but of course, if there's a need and we find a need, absolutely.
Hmm.
With those experienced ones, usually the questions I get is that management level step up, how to do it, what to do.
Ah, how did like you did? How you
Indeed,
Yeah.
absolutely.
How did you step up? Like from let's go from senior CRA or you were what? You were CRA, then you were senior CRA, then you were line manager, then you were what? Hiring manager.
Absolutely. Yeah. The way I did was more just like throwing myself in front of people and wanting to do things. Yes, it has taken a lot of time from me. I was working long hours to be able to do that.
Hmm.
Um,
Wait.
but
So when you threw yourself into the stream,
yes,
how do you do that? Like, do you?
mentorship programs. So if there are mentorship programs, so you can be a mentor to a more junior CRA, for example,
Hmm.
that's kind of is your starting point.
Do you
It
think
really,
like when you do this as a more experienced CRA, you join a mentorship program to mentor juniors? Are
that's
people watching you who are decision makers, or do you feel like you're doing it for no reason? I mean, it's nice to help someone out, but are you actually rewarded for doing this? Like, do people see this?
yes, absolutely. It comes at the end of the year annual review. It is, it comes to that. And some of the CROs do have the bonus scheme that is kind of linked. So it puts your scoring of the bonus up at the end of the year as an annual review. So you kind of feel a bit rewarded. But
Mm,
there have been occasions that it was just me giving it. But the way then I shifted my mentality with that, thinking, okay, right, anything I'm practicing in here to mentor is actually kind of a training program for me in return. I am learning my skills and
mhm.
I'm educating myself how to manage people because I had different personalities, different levels of CRAs. And it was like, okay, so there's no one type of management. You have to adapt yourself for the each individuals.
I
And
see.
to learn that, you have to kind of do it in the same time.
I see. So putting yourself in the way means becoming a mentor, giving back. What else? Your annual reviews, were there other things? Like, did you have to go to your manager at that time and say, hey, I would like to do this? Or were you more of the silent, let me work hard and hopefully they notice type, or what? What's the
No,
best
no,
way?
absolutely. I communicated it, what I wanted and what can I do for it. This is where I want to go. So at the annual reviews, it's not about your management asking you questions and following the program, right? It is about as an individual, you need to bring it to the table that what you want from your future and then what can the company do for you. It takes that initiative to do that in the same time. um, I have asked if I can help the project managers if there's anything I can do extra that to support, as an associate. Sometimes I have filled in absence of my project managers if they're on annual leave as a senior CRA. Can I support any of the submissions or any reviews, etc.? These additional tasks. It really kind of helps me out to practice it as I'm doing it in the same time. And then that gets seen by your line manager and the efforts you're doing because you're getting a feedback as well. You're building your strengths and your
I
skill
see.
sets more and more.
And is this mandatory or to be a mentor, or it's totally optional?
No, it's a choice.
I see. So that's where the differentiation comes in. And at one point, were you training, let's say mentoring, where did you already think in the back of your mind, hey, one day maybe I'll open a recruitment agency, or was that already too far away?
No, it was too far away at the time. I wanted the management level. It was kind of a step at a time. I didn't want to be a manager just because it's a fancy title and I wanted that, etc. I wanted to make sure that I am ready, regardless of what the title is. I wanted to give those skill sets and be able to support the people who I will be managing for what they need. You don't want to just go to your line manager because you have to have a catch up one-to-one. They need to be there for you to answer some of the questions, but also they need to be able to guide you through some of the ups and downs and the frustrations you might have, or difficulties or issues. And there's a lot really in that position. It isn't just uh, as short as the title.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so we promised you guys this could be a 3-hour podcast, but we promised we would get to the research naive. That's a big segment of the audience.
Yes.
You mentioned medics, paramedics, EMTs. I've interviewed many who have gone on to become coordinators, CRAs, site owners. They, my brother-in-law's been a paramedic for EMT for 20 years. He's about to retire, and he does stock trading on the side, so he never got into clinical research. But he knows. I mean, you ask him about something medical, especially like in an acute setting, he knows so much, like at this point. And I always told him, this is transferable skill. Like, more than my coordinators do on this stuff. So why is it that more EMTs don't get into research? Like, I mean, what do you think is the reason for this?
There are multiple reasons. One, I think historically we have kind of isolated ourselves, research versus community, or
Mm,
research versus general practitioners, etc. And the amount of times I'm sure we all went to see our own GP practice for general things and never been really talked or, told about the research. The main issues or questions I get is, I think the new generation is more curious. New generation of medics, they want to know. They're kind of want to get involved and they're asking the questions, which is great to see. But it sometimes unknown is so easy to be blocked. I think as industry experts, we need to open our hands and arms to provide the information they need and the efforts and the times. The way I've done this in the past, going to some of their cluster meetings, for example, in UK GP practices, they've got in the geographical area their regular meetings where they keep themselves up to date. And I tapped into those, bringing the research information and just even asking the basic questions. Have you ever thought about the research, or what do you think? Or you because some of the patient pools and populations, they are at the community, and we need to work together, and they know their patients better than we do. um to make that as a ongoing thing, you need to work both ways, two-way communication. And I work with amazing medics to provide us some of the recruitment, but also they want to slowly get involved. So the way to do that is always, I recommend to become a sub investigator and pair them with the investigator who's really experienced so they can learn and be supported, but also not just by the investigator, by the CRC. by the data manager. So it's a teamwork, right? And get them slowly involved. Yes, we had some barriers from the sponsors questioning, because of their lack of experience, but we assured them as a site that they are supported. And we have provided the GCP training, making sure they understand and they practice as much as they can. So we have opened a lot of opportunities to research naive medics, and same goes with the pharmacy technicians as well.
Yes, and one of the other roles here, so I'm super passionate about this for some reason. Maybe it's because I've worked alongside MAs, phlebotomists, CNAs, certified nursing assistants, farm techs, my whole career. Like they're
Yeah,
adjacent to the private practice. You get being in this space, you get to meet a lot of these people. And you start thinking, like even the doctors I work with, I'm not supposed to recruit their staff. We have like this kind of informal rule. If one of their staff wants to work for me, they've got to ask permission and go through this
yeah,
process. I'm not allowed to like poach them because they know, and I've imposed that limit on myself to let the doctors know, yeah, they clearly are gonna like what we do better. Like they see our staff, they see them having more fun as coordinators than what you guys do. So unfortunately, I can't recruit like the ones most close to me,
yeah,
but it's almost the perfect environment for letting them learn by watching, by observing, even indirectly. Like they just see us running around the office, the way we talk to patients. One of them asked me recently, "Hey, why do you guys spend like 4 hours with one of your patients when for us it's like 5 minutes?" And then I explained. They gave me a chance to explain. I could see they're thinking about it, right? But I'm
yeah.
not allowed to. I say, "Well, go to my YouTube channel, check it out, MAs." So I'm super passionate about this cohort of like I want to say it's like underpaid, overworked, a lot of transferable skills. What has been your experiences as a recruiter now when you find this perfect candidate that's, research naive but has all the transferable skills a research site would want? What has been the feedback from the sites as far as these people are concerned?
Yeah, absolutely. So from the site perspective, I always recommend openness. They really need to have both side expectations, because sometimes they might be an amazing medic and they've got these amazing skills, but they still need hand holding in the certain areas. For example, the way take the patient notes on a just a A4 piece of paper at a practice is varies, to a source document, right? And there were
Mm.
all these step by step. Sometimes I had reactions from amazing investigators like, oh, I don't need that source data, I just need a pen and paper. So it's just having that understanding and mentality and willing to educate and learn and train, kind of need to have that open-minded setting first of all. As soon as the site has got that understanding, that's it. It's amazing. Having to learn and both sharing and gradually going into the investigator position. I have seen amazing sub investigators within 6 to 8 months going into being accepted as an investigator for projects. So,
Mm.
some things takes time, but
Yep.
sometimes it's amazing skills that you can actually utilize.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I like there's one of the reasons why as a site owner, the best way to hire a coordinator is to hire an MA and train them under your team that you currently have. And that's why we're very careful about who we hire. We don't often even post. Like we try to find from our
Yeah.
network, from our sphere of influence, like, hey, I know this girl. She works for Dr. So and so, and she's kind of not happy with her career progression there, but she's amazing. Like she's the one that runs that office. She holds it together. When I hear that in my head as a site owner, I'm thinking I need to figure out how to get her curious about what we do. And she might already be a little bit, but maybe not. And then that's where I have to jump in and say, hey, listen, there's a whole new world out there. Like salary wise. I mean, a lot of these people can go so far, they just don't realize it. So it's in a way, it's frustrating to me even having the channel, and I could sense that same kind of passion on your end. So we definitely need more people doing what you do, especially at the research naive level, because there's so many good candidates, and sites are still struggling
Yeah,
with
there's a big
finding staff. We lost you for a minute, but you came out of the rainforest and back into the car. Your background
yes,
was
you
really
need to be
nice.
adaptable. As I said, these are the skill sets. You have to be very quick thinking solutions.
You have to, but it's definitely something I think I'm gonna figure out a way to dedicate more content on my channel to specifically EMTs. There's two like different streams I want to approach. There's to grow my channel. Because I feel like with research, I mean, I could keep interviewing guests, and that's awesome. You're always learning something else. But in addition, I want to do something for like these MAs, CNAs, paramedic, EMT, farm tech, this whole even front desk, like reception. And then another one for like mid-level providers, like nurse practitioners, physician's assistants. I think there's so much in that world, and there's so much frustration in what they do that
Yeah.
research, as stressful as research is, it's nothing compared to working at some of these organizations that are not in research. I'm telling you because I work alongside them and I see how they roll.
But this is why we are seeing the impacts, the short skills in the research. For example, oncology. It is really short of oncologists in UK, and it's a big struggle even onto day-to-day care on the oncology hospitals, never mind just the research. So what did happen, the pattern is a lot of amazing oncologists have retired, and the skill sets has not been passed on very quickly to newly graduated medics or other oncologists for the research. Hence why now we're trying to do this catch up, but still it's very slow, and there are long waits for the patients, and they don't get enrolled into these trials
Mm.
very quickly, and there are a lot of waits for that as well. So yeah, I think we need to do a lot of work from every angle we can think of, and
Mm.
I think we need to actually execute it rather than talking about it that we do all the time. We
Yeah,
don't want to be talking about this in 20 years. It should be really done.
I agree. And I mean, you're talking about 20 years. I actually think the higher paid jobs are more at risk of being lost to AI than the lower paid jobs. So I actually think MAs, EMTs, farm techs, I actually think interestingly enough, because of their lower pay, they're more protected from AI disruptions than the higher paid, which would be like mid-level providers or maybe even physicians. But that's another podcast. Listen, for the people that waited this long, okay, we promised, we talked a little bit about salary. You brought up a few times, but a large cohort of your your clients, are not just research naive. They are people that were just like you. CRA, hey, SefTap, I've been a CRA for 7 years, but my career's not progressing. I'm gonna call you for help. What's like the first thing you do?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, understand them, listen to them. What is it exactly? Because sometimes people expectations are different to when you start to get to know by asking and unrevealing these layers. They might be 7-year CRA, but they've never actually experienced phase 1 trial, or there might be they have never really mentored another CRA, or they have maybe haven't worked in the certain settings, or they might have just only done remote, because of
Mm.
since DCT has been enrolled, etc. After the COVID. Not everybody has done on-site monitoring. There are so many people out there has done the remote. So there's no one answer. You have to understand and also educate. I need to make sure they understand the reality.
And what? do you find that when these kind of people call you and they're just saying, "Hey, no, I feel like I'm stuck," is
Yeah.
that always a translation for more money, or do they actually reveal deeper things that maybe they don't even know unless you start asking?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. Of course, the effort and the time equals money, right? They have to be rewarded with that.
Mhm.
I'm sure we all are working to pay our bills and have the appreciation in return that, reflects on the salary. But I have to start telling people to stop comparing yourselves to others and stop comparing what's in the market. You need to value yourself for your own experience and your own level. A lot of people comes to me because of they're tired, they're overworked, long
Mhm.
hours, and they feel like they haven't been appreciated. But then
Mhm.
I always say to them, okay, what have you done about it?
And
Right?
what's the usual answer to that?
The usual answer is the silence. They're frustrated in silence. They're frustrated every day after they finish their work or closing their laptops, and they haven't really raised these concerns uh, efficiently, proactively. I'm not talking about just complaining emotionally, okay? Sometimes, of course, we are human, we've got our emotions, but you need to think. It's like an emotional intelligence in a way. You need to be able to express, put a plan in place. Don't just say, this is what I want to do and I want to get paid for this or I want this next step. You need to come to the table by bringing a solution with you. What do you think? How can you achieve to those? And what are you prepared to do to be able to achieve? Then ask the support, how can I make this happen?
Kind of like that. But sometimes the critics of what you're doing would say, well, self-tap, and I don't disagree with you. Self-tap, that's bad advice. You're telling them to go talk to their, leader instead of just working with you to get them out of this mess. It's like for you, it's counterintuitive, but I mean, maybe it's not because I think I would do something similar. I think ultimately you will be rewarded for taking that approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, it doesn't work for everyone, right? And you kind of need to take those steps yourself in the same time. At the end of it, it is what you want to do. That's what it will get you to. If that means you exploring different opportunities, sometimes taking a side step, different career path or different position and exploring. And I always say, explore other positions. You might think, okay, you want to be a project manager. For example, I always wanted to be a study manager. When I was a CRA, I always thought, okay, this is where I want to go. But then when I started infilling my study managers in their absence while they're on holiday, etc., I thought, okay, that doesn't actually fit in with my personality, my soft skills, because I didn't want to work just in the project and be isolated. I felt like I would be stuck in that. I was more happier to work with multiple departments, multiple people, bring in, for example, vendor team, bring in the regulatory, bring in the site manager. So then when I thought about, okay, that's more operations, hence why I went that angle. So without exploring and experiencing and understanding it, what you want to do, not necessarily what you're going to be happy with.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we need to do more of these because this could have been 3 hours. But happy to discuss further as well. We have CRC Academy that we've dedicated to like the research naive, lower paid candidates, and then we have a CRA Academy we've created. But the more we can do to help these, I guess, staff the industry, the better. Because even in a bad job market, which is what we are in now, maybe we'll end with that. We're supposedly in a bad job market, and I think that's true for CROs and biotechs, some of them, but I'm not seeing it at the site level. Are you?
No, at the site level, there are still a lot of positions available, and it feels like there's not enough talent out there. And there's a lot of sites are struggling because of there's not enough pool of talents.
Yep.
And that's where we fit in perfectly and support. And that's what we are seeing, hence why most of our clients are the site management organizations, and
Yep.
there's this new era. I don't know what's happening to the CRO word. It seems to be a bit changing at the moment, the industry, the way it's been structured. And we are seeing more expansion and collaboration across sites and site networks becoming together or expanding
Yep.
uh, their networks. So hence why there's a growth of positions on those areas. And then on the other side, we are seeing a lot of restructuring in the CROs and biotech and pharmas that is becoming that people are losing their jobs because of that. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of CRAs out there looking for positions, but unfortunately there's not enough. But then we've got CRCs and research nurses and lab technicians, etc., growing from the other side.
It'll be interesting to watch. Um, thank you so much, Zeftap. Listen,
No
anyone that
problem.
wants to connect with her, her LinkedIn is underneath. Message her, connect with her. I think it's a very good set for Guru Nation, and maybe drop in on one of her drop-in sessions.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
See what's going on there, and we'll do this again, Zeftap. Everyone, go connect with her right now. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Bye bye.